I've had some people give me some ideas. They say Bill's Kitchen, In the Kitchen with Bill, Cooking with Bill. Hey, I'm Bill. So we're still looking for a name. What we're going to do tonight is I want to cook something up my wife really loves. And it's a combination of like a jambalaya meets red beans and rice. It's my little take on things. And so what we're doing is we're going to take a few ingredients. Now, first of all, we're going to do the taking onions. We're dicing them up. We're dicing up some celery. We're dicing up some peppers. We're going to throw in some also diced up garlic into it. So it's going to have nice aromatics to it. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some chicken. Now I prefer dark meat to do this. I'm going to use chicken thighs or chicken legs. In this case I'm using chicken legs. And I'm taking about 6 or 7 chicken legs, probably about 1.5 pounds of meat. And I'm going to cook it in this pot with a little bit of olive oil. Now I'm going to debone the meat off of the chicken first. And then I'm going to throw bones and all in here because I want those bones to cook in the oil, release as much of the fat and juices out of the bones, and then I'll pull the bones out later. I'm also going to put in an Italian sausage, a hot Italian sausage. Now if you have a hot sausage that you like from Mexico, or if you like a andouille sausage like they'd have down in New Orleans, I'd use that as well. So what I've done is I went over, Costco had some really nice hot Italian sausage that are in links. We'll cut the links long ways, so I just peel the membrane off and then I just break up the meat into little chunks with the chicken. So I'm going to let that cook first. It's going to take probably about 10 minutes or so to render out all the fat. And what we're left with now, because I've already done that, as you can see here, I've got the sausage and the chicken done here. And I left the oil or the fat in here because that's what we're going to use to cook next. So we're going to start this up. We have the heat on high. I'm going to take the peppers. It's 1 large pepper. I happen to have an orange one, so I use it. Doesn't matter. You could use green, red, whatever. I'm using 2 medium red onions diced up. And I'm taking about 1.5 cups or so. It's probably about 8 stalks of celery, and I've also diced those up. So what we're going to do is let those cook, and I'm going to even put the garlic in with it as well. Now what you want to do when you're cooking up vegetables, you want to have a little bit of fat in the bottom for them to start working. We might even put a little bit more olive oil. I'm stirring them up so that I can get the fat along all of the pieces of vegetable. We're going to let this cook down. As soon as it's cooked down, I'm going to actually remove it from the pot, and I'm going to get a little bit of more oil in here. I'm going to use butter this time, and I'm going to make what's called a roux. Now, a roux means that you're going to take the butter and some flour, and you're going to cook it together. So you want to get rid of that flour taste, and it's going to become brown. Now, the reason we do that is a thickening agent. And some cooking you might use like a potato starch, or you might use a corn starch. Sometimes people will do that when they're doing sauces. With this, we're going to do more of a traditional. If I have enough rendering left in the pan, I'll just use the rendering from the meat. If not, I'll add some butter, and then we'll brown that up. As soon as we're done, we'll come back. I'll start showing you how to put this together. We have taken the vegetables out. They've softened. That's what we wanted to see. Now we're going to add a little bit of flour. Now when you do this, you don't want to add too much at a time. It can thicken up very fast. And so what you do is you start stirring it around. You want it to start to brown. You want to brown up because you don't want the taste of raw flour, even though it would thicken. It's just not very appetizing. So what we're doing right now is we have turned down our heat a little bit. We're browning it. Once it gets pretty brown, we're going to add everything back to this. And this only takes a couple minutes to do. So just watch it. You don't want to burn it. And again, it doesn't take a lot of the roux. It doesn't take a lot of the roux to thicken this up. So we've got it in there. We're going to go ahead and start adding our ingredients back. So the first thing we'll put back is the meat. Again, comes to about, 3 pounds of meat. Now you could put whatever you want in this. If you don't like chicken, you could put pork, you could put just about anything. I wouldn't probably say fish, but I guess you could do fish if you like it. If you're up north and you want to put lobster in it, good luck. Now we're going to put the vegetables back in. Stir that around a little bit. Now the next thing we're going to add is chicken stock. Now I'm using a bone broth. You can buy chicken stock, you can buy bone broth. The little difference is bone broth is actually cooked with the bones, and so it gives it that extra flavor. It's almost more like you have stewed it yourself for quite a while. Now we have that. That's the base for what we're going to put in here. Next thing I'm going to do is add some of the other ingredients that we like to have in here. First of all, as we do this, you got to season in layers. So we're going to season a little bit more. So I'm going to take a little bit of Creole, have some Creole mix. If you didn't want to use Creole mix, you could put in chili powder and some paprika and salt and pepper and stuff. But I'm going to add some of this. Now again, it's to taste. As my grandmother used to say, everything is to taste. I'm going to put a little chipotle in here, a little chocolate chipotle. Now again, you have to be careful when you use some peppers because you never know what the people around you like. And if they don't like a lot of heat, you can really knock them out of the park with this, because you've put in hot sausage at the beginning if you use that, like an andouille. So you always got to check what you're doing. You want to taste what you're making as you go along too. So we're going to put a little bit of cumin powder. Now if you don't know about cumin, it's the principal thing that you smell when you have chili. So if you have somebody making a chili, they'll use a cumin. It's got a really nice earthy flavor to it. I'm putting a little bit of basil, a little bit of oregano in here as well. And again, I'm doing it to touch, but we're probably putting about a tablespoon of the major ones, so cumin, basil, the oregano, that kind of thing. We're probably putting a tablespoon of that, and then we're putting in maybe a teaspoon or so of the other ground savory here. So that's about close to about a half teaspoon right there. I feel like I need to do what my grandmother did, and I showed you in one of the previous ones. All right, sage. Okay, this is a rubbed sage. Got a really nice aroma to it. Now what we're doing is we are layering all these flavors, and a little bit of marjoram for the last thing. Love the aromas of all these. We're blending these to make kind of our own curry, if you will. Now they would never call it a curry, but that's basically what a curry is a bunch of spices that are put together. So we've put that in the pot. We've got the meats. They've already cooked down. We've got a little bit of a roux in there to thicken it up. And so now we've got our first two layers done, actually, because the first layer was the meat, and it made its own flavors there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in a bunch of beans. Now, I like the red kidney beans. I also like black beans. And so I'm putting in two cans of black beans, one large can of the kidney beans. We'll stir those in. So here's where that red beans and rice comes out. A lot of people will have different kind of beans, or a lot of people like to use the red kidney beans. We're going to add just a little bit of tomato. So I use the crushed tomatoes. Now you could use a ripe tomato and do it yourself. And then the last thing that will really add some depth to this flavor, a word they kick around in all the food shows, is umami. Not omami, but umami, which is basically layers of flavor. It's having a depth to it. And so what we're doing is we're adding a tomato paste, and it will add that little oomph that you won't know what it is, but it gives it that extra flavor. So that sharpness of that tomato paste, that will be the kicker for things when it starts making that, when this gets to its final stages. So, recapping, we're making kind of a red beans and rice andouille mixture type of thing. We started out, we cooked up some spicy sausage. Again, you could use andouille. We use Italian spicy sausage. You could use a Mexican sausage if you like that. We added to that, we took it off the heat. We left the oil there from the renderings of the meat, and we put in our vegetables. We sauteed them down so that they were soft, brought them back out, made a quick roux, took the roux, made it into a brown roux, right? That's going to help us thicken. Put in our stock, we added in our spices, and then we went ahead and we finished off with putting the beans in. I'm going to let this simmer for a while, and then the last thing I'm going to put in is I'm going to put in some rice. I use a brown rice with this, and I'm also going to put in some quinoa in it because I like that flavor of quinoa. So we're going to do that in a little bit. So I'm going to put a lid on here, let this cook for probably about 10 minutes or so. Come back and taste it, see if the spices are right. If it is, add my rice, let it simmer until it's done, and we're done. So I hope you're enjoying this segment. If you see the guy up here in the corner and he's doing a bunch of this, well, that's my evil twin. Nah, that's me. But I'm a sign language interpreter. I thought this would be good to offer this to my friends that are deaf and hard of hearing. Yes, I can sign when I talk, but it's a lot easier to use this guy up here. So anyway, if you have friends that would like to see it in sign language, let them know. You need to go out to YouTube, to my URL. You need to set up and register with my site so that you get things. So subscribe to my site. If you're on Facebook and seeing it, you can like it. You can follow me. Anything you'd like to do, give me input. I'm always looking for input. We'll be back in a bit. Okay, so been about 10 minutes or so. One of the important things when you're doing this roux to thicken, you got to bring that sauce up to a boil. It'll really start to interact with all of the liquids that you have, and you'll start to see this start to thicken up. Now, since we've got it sitting here this long, we're going to take a quick taste. Man, I wish you could taste this stuff. This is good eating. This is really good eating. Now, if you put this with the bread that I made the other day, got something to sop up this stuff, I'm telling you, it's good eating. So the next thing we need to do, because we're about at the end point here, we're going to put in some rice and we're going to put in some quinoa. So to add this rice and stuff, we're going to use a cup. I'm going to put about 2 cups of rice. And 1 cup of quinoa. Now again, if you don't like quinoa, don't add it. If you're not wild about brown rice, use white rice, use jasmine rice. But what we're going to do is we're going to stir that into this. It's going to help also thicken it. But those kernels or those rice and quinoa are going to plump up. And it's going to make this a really, really nice dinner. So, next time you're looking at kind of something that'll hold you over, really got that hearty flavor to it, instead of just going out and getting a stew from a store or something, make your own. Again, it's a mixer, kind of jambalaya, red beans and rice kind of idea. But we're using dark meat, chicken. But again, you could use pork, you could use ground beef, you could use whatever you'd like. We're also using a spicy sausage. Again, you could use mild or no sausage. Vegetables, okay? You could add anything you want in vegetables in this. I just happen to like using the trifecta there. So when you're using the celery and you're using the onions and you're using the peppers, I believe they call that mirepoix. Get that mixed up with some of the other things. But when you're doing that, you're going to put that in here. You're going to let it simmer. You're going to have a lot of food because this will make this entire pot, when it's done, will be full. It's delicious. I hope you enjoy it. And again, Cooking with Bill in Bill's kitchen. I'll see you in the kitchen.